Okay, good finish to the regular season Saturday night. It's great to send our seniors out as far as their last home game with a win, and we started slow. Didn't have a lot going for us in the first quarter, but got some momentum and ended up finishing strong and doing what we needed to do, and so that puts an end to the regular season. Some really good performances. Brant Keithy was outstanding. Defense was solid. Got some good things going on special teams in the punt return game. So a lot of positives in the game, and came out healthy. Very few issues that way. And now it's time to get ready for the Pac-12 championship game on Friday night. Oregon, very good football team. They're running the football well. They're defending it well as far as defending the run. Got a great quarterback in the Herbert kid. He's a big, strong kid, big arm, and big talent. Defense, they're playing exceptionally well in the red zone. Only 33% touchdowns allowed in the red zone defensively, which is really good. That's got to be among the best in the country, if not the best. Special teams as well. They've got return. The return game is very good. Kickoff return, punt return. They've made a lot of plays there, and so it's a good football team. They're a solid team. All three phases, and we'll have our hands full. And so we just got to have a great week of practice, like always, and go down there and compete and see what happens. So, questions?
Coach, relative to last season at this time last year, you guys have been able to stay healthy at key positions. How much does that matter in terms of being consistent on what you want to do offensively and defensively?
Well, it matters, but you never complain or make excuses about injuries because everybody's got them, and so that's something we never do, regardless of our situation. But we feel like we're in pretty good shape right now, to answer your question, and we have our fair share of guys that have things that are bothering them that still play through it, but we should be okay.
Okay, what have you learned from last year's appearance at the Pac-12 championship, or is there anything maybe that you can take from that game?
Well, I think the experience that our players had last year, playing in the stadium and playing in that environment, will be a positive because a lot of these guys obviously were in that game. But other than that, it's a new opponent, different matchup, and so I'm not sure that there's any big advantage other than guys have been there before.
Hi, Coach. We see what Brant is able to do offensively with his speed and agility and whatnot, but how good of an overall tight end is he? What kind of a blocker is he? Are there some other areas where he's excelling where we're not seeing or needs to improve in?
He's a very good blocker. He's not the biggest guy. He's 225, 230 pounds, and so he's not a typical inline tight end that is going to be in the anchor and run power and those type of things. But he plays that H-back role very well, where he's moving around and the wind back blocks on the zone read and also is the second puller on the counters. And so he does exactly what we need him to do in the run game as far as his blocking. He's a very willing blocker. He never turns anything down. He's a tough guy, and he's a complete player. He's just not your prototypical anchor tight end on the end of the line of scrimmage.
So why is a tight end sweep such a killer play, and why wait so late in the year to break it out? What is the backstory and how that evolved?
Well, it's a good play because Brant's a good athlete. He makes it go. You got to have the right guy to do that. You can't just do it with any tight end. And Andy's continually adding things to the offense, and I don't have a great answer as to why we didn't break it out earlier, other than better late than never, and it's very effective right now. So yeah.
We saw in Oregon's loss, the Devils hit on a few deep balls. When Andy goes to pick up his game plan, put together his game plan, and even maybe on the defensive side too, how much do you base the game plans on what you see other teams having success do against the opponent that you're playing that given week?
Oh, a lot. I mean, that's why you study film. You're looking for ways to move the ball offensively and defensively. You're looking at things schematically that people might have done to them that was successful, and so that definitely plays into what your line of thinking is. Now, you don't depart, completely from what you're doing. It's got to fit within, the realm of your personnel and what you're doing. You can't just have a complete departure from that, but it's certainly part of the deal. And their back end. You mentioned Arizona State hit on some shots, but their back end is very athletic. They're leading the conference in interceptions, so they're really good back there. They got good athletes.
Kyle, can you expound a little bit on your unfinished business mantra that you guys have kind of had to get here, and then just talk about maybe the challenges and how difficult it was to get back here?
Well, it was very difficult to get back here to answer the second part of your question. It's running the gauntlet of a 9-game Pac-12 schedule is not easy, and of course we started out far from the ideal situation, losing that first one where we had to run the table the rest of the way. And so it was a long, hard road, but our guys persevered and continued to work and continued to stay focused and continued to just attack them one at a time. And that's really the only way you can do it. First part of your question again? Oh, the unfinished business part, yeah. Well, that was something that our returning seniors adopted. That wasn't anything that was manufactured by the coaching staff or anything. And so they just, what it is basically saying is we got there last year to the championship game and weren't able to get over get the win, and so now we get another chance this year, and that's I believe the message is let's try to finish and have a chance to win the whole thing, which we do right now. We're in position for it, but like I said, we got a good opponent.
So thinking back over these 8 games, is there a defining game or moment to you that got you here?
Okay, I would say Oregon State. We went over there and really just cut loose and had a huge lopsided victory. That's when, at least in my own mind, I'm not speaking for anybody else, thought, hey, this team has a chance to be special if we can keep this up. And I can't remember how many games after USC that was. Anybody remember? Second after? Yeah, okay.
The Pac-12 champion generally goes to the Rose Bowl, but you're in a position now where if you win, you're potentially looking at something else, something more significant potentially. Does it feel weird from that standpoint that if you win, you're not necessarily going to the Rose Bowl, you're potentially doing something else?
No, it doesn't, and we haven't paid a whole lot of attention to it. I mean, we certainly understand the big picture, but control the controllables, and all we can control is trying to get a win on Friday against Oregon, and then it's out of our hands after that point. So we don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, and it doesn't really seem odd, I guess the word, or strange is what you used. Either way, it's just whatever our fate is, that's what we'll do, and it'll be good. I can tell you right now, it'll be good no matter what happens if we're able to win. Yeah.
Kyle, going back to last year's title game and just the freaky nature of that touchdown that made the difference, now, has that game stuck in your craw, and is it
Every loss sticks in my craw, whatever a craw is. What is a craw? I don't know. Your cheek? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, fish. Okay. No, every game is painful that you lose, and as a coach, if you went back and you can't remember right off the top of your head, but if you went back and look at all the losses listed, you'd remember every one and what went wrong and just the circumstances. But that was we didn't get much offense generated last year, and to credit the Husky defense, they're a really good defense, and so it was very it was tough to move the ball. But that one play was seemed to be the tipping point in the game, and couldn't overcome that, and that was disappointing. But that's football. They made the play, and congratulations to them.
Okay, what's different about Oregon this year than maybe last year when you faced them?
Not a whole lot. They had really good players last year. They got really good players this year. Their offensive line, I neglected to say that in my opening statements about them. They're really good on the offensive line. That should be the intriguing matchup of this game and a battle that's going to be pivotal in who wins the game is their offensive line versus our defensive line.
To revisit last year's Pac-12 title game one more
Again?
time. Yes, if you
Holy
had
Toledo.
won
My
the
craw is
game,
killing me.
because you're not focused on the outcome, it's more the Pac-12 championship. That's what you control. If you'd won the Pac-12 championship, do you think this senior class, a lot of them would have gone to the NFL? They wouldn't have the unfinished
Last
business
year?
to come back this year?
Could be. I can't answer that. We'd have to ask them each individually, but I would say that might have swayed at least some of them in that regard. But no, never posed that to them. Good question.
When you get involved in
Just looking at you.
when you get involved in recruiting, and it comes down to, say, two schools, in this case, Oregon and Utah, how much does it matter if you go out and beat Oregon in that sense?
Well, I think guys that are going right down to the wire that have those two particular schools in mind, and that's what they've narrowed it down to. It could have a bearing, but I think there's other things that probably supersede that. The opportunity to play early, that's a big deal now with recruits is early playing time. So what's the roster look like on both those teams as far as my opportunity and also location and that type of thing. So I would say it's a factor. Is it the biggest factor? Maybe in a few of the kids' minds, but mostly I would say not the most important thing for that decision.
Your defense has been on the field for a total of 690 plays so far this season, second fewest of any team in the country.
Who's fewest?
I'm not sure.
Oh, you have to have that stat.
I'll bring it back. I'll bring it
92%
next
of
time.
stats are made up on the spot, so you could have just made something up.
That's from The Simpsons.
Okay, maybe Wisconsin. Anyway. Navy it is. Okay. One fewer game, so we are the least per game. So, question about that?
What does that speak to in terms of how efficient your defense has been this season from down to down?
Okay, it speaks of two things. First of all, how well we're controlling the ball offensively. That's a big part of it. We're controlling the football, making first downs, not turning it over. So our defense is on the sidelines a bunch of the game because of that. Secondly, it says we're doing a great job on third down defensively, which we just snuck under the 30% conversion mark after last game, which is outstanding. I don't know if we've ever in the history of Utah football been sub 30% on allowing opponents to convert on third down. And so those two things play hand in hand and make for the amount of snaps that you've seen us play, and that's a big plus for us, particularly on defense, because we've played essentially two less games than everybody else as far as the wear and tear on our guys.
You make up that 30% stat?
No, I never make up things. I never make things up, as far as you know. Yeah.
Speaking of their offensive line, Sewell, the left tackle in
Yeah.
particular, did you have recruiting history with him, and how would you describe him as a player?
We recruited him hard. He was an in-state kid, and we think he's a tremendous player. A lot of people think he's the best O-lineman in the country, so that's how good he is, and we were in it till the very end. At least we thought we were, and at the end didn't choose us. And he was hurt. Was it last year? He was hurt part of the season, but anyway, he's been healthy all year this year, and is just a phenomenal player. So he's really good.
Kyle, you've been part of a lot of teams here that believe that they can hang with anybody in the country. Is there something about this year's team, the DNA of this group, that makes you believe that?
Yeah, the talent level. I got to believe this is the most talented team we've had here, and that's at least that I've since I've been here, and that's a pretty bold statement because there's been some teams come through here that are really good, but I think when all is said and done and we look back, this may be the best of them all, at least to this point.
By the way, I looked it up.
Craw?
Stuck in craw means hard to swallow.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. We
got
learned
it.
something
Thank
today.
you. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask, Kyle, can you compare this season to 04 and 08? Do you have the same vibe? And now that you talked about when they switched from the Mountain West to the Pac-12, it was like jumping the Grand Canyon. Are you on the other side safely now?
Well, first part of the question, it does feel a lot like 04 and 08. Those special seasons that don't come around all the time. That where everything seems to be clicking and things go your way, and so there is that feel. As far as have we arrived? No, I don't think we'd ever say we've arrived, but we're certainly in the best place, in our opinion, since we joined the conference by far. Right now, we're on pretty solid ground, and we're continually trying to get better and recruit better and build buildings and stadiums and that type of thing. But I think we're in a pretty good spot right now, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
You talked about Oregon and all the interceptions. It's a sign of their athleticism. A lot of times interceptions are easier for guys to get when they're in a zone and they see the ball the whole way. Does Oregon, how does the balance work between how much they're in zone and how much they're in man, and how much does that impact their interception total?
They mix it up pretty good, and another thing that impacts interceptions is your defensive front getting after the quarterback, so he's under duress and making throws that just to avoid getting sacked and to try to get himself out of trouble, and so that's a part of it as well. But they do a good job mixing things up, and we play a ton of man, and we're always almost always amongst the leaders in interceptions as well. And so I think we're second to Oregon this year. So it can be done either way. I don't think there's any big huge difference as far as the interceptions, whether you play man or zone.
Kyle, assuming you guys win this game, is there going to be any temptation to throw Britton Covey back into the mix, or are you guys still just kind of on the fence of where he might be with the end of his year?
Yeah, good question. And the longer this has gone on, the less that possibility is, and I would say I can't see that happening at this point. I think we're far enough down the road where you can definitively say that he will continue to redshirt.
Coaches from other staffs in the conference and throughout the country, they're on the road recruiting this week. You obviously have a game to prepare. How do you handle the recruiting and the preparation for the game?
Good point, and that's something that is a minor disadvantage in I guess at face value, but in the big picture, I think it's a positive to be in this game and helps us in the long run more so than if we weren't in the game and we're out on the road. But what we do is we send out the word to the recruits that we won't be able to see them this week because of the preparation for the game, and give them let them know why that we won't be there when many 85% of the other schools will be there and available to do that. But I think the trade-off is certainly well worth it. Good. Thank you.